The sound of a heart monitor is the loudest noise in the world when it's measuring the life of your only child. Beep, beep, beep. It's a rhythmic countdown, a reminder that my daughter, Harper, is suspended somewhere between life and death. She looks so small in that hospital bed. Her face, usually bright with laughter, is swollen, bruised, unrecognizable. Tubes run down her throat like plastic snakes, choking the life out of her. I reached out and touched her hand. It was cold. Too cold. 3 days ago, she was the captain of the debate team. She was talking about college applications. Now, the doctors are using words like traumatic brain injury and vegetative state. They told me it was an accident. The police report said rough play gone wrong at a bonfire party. But I know what rough play looks like. I spent 20 years in the SEAL teams. I've seen bodies broken by IEDs and bodies broken by fists. Looking at my daughter's shattered ribs and the defensive fractures on her forearms, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't play. This was a massacre. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment on your city or country. The door to the hospital room creaked open. It was Detective Grant. He was a heavy-set man who smelled like stale coffee and cheap cigarettes. He wouldn't look me in the eye. That was the first sign. In my line of work, you learn to read micro-expressions. When a man looks at the floor while talking to a grieving father, he's either guilty or he's hiding something. Mr. Adrian, Grant said, shifting his weight. We've concluded the preliminary investigation. The boys, the athletes involved, they're all saying the same thing. Harper had too much to drink. She fell from the bleachers. The injuries are consistent with a fall. I stood up slowly. I'm not a small man. Years of carrying rucksacks and dragging wounded teammates have left me with a specific kind of density. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just walked over to the detective until I was inches from his face. A fall. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. A fall broke her jaw in 2 places. A fall left boot-shaped bruises on her stomach. Did she fall onto their fists, Detective? Grant took a step back, his hand instinctively twitching toward his belt. Look, I know you're upset, but these are good kids. Julian, the quarterback. His father is Judge Oliver. These boys have bright futures. We don't want to ruin lives over a tragic mistake. There it was. The truth disguised as sympathy. We don't want to ruin lives. He meant their lives. The lives of the Golden Boys. The sons of the town's elite. My daughter was just collateral damage. To them, I was just a retired soldier living on a pension, a nobody. Get out, I said. Mr. Adrian, I get out. He left, but the smell of corruption lingered in the room. I sat back down next to Harper. My wife, Tessa, hadn't been to the hospital since yesterday. She said she couldn't handle seeing Harper like this. She said it was too much. But there was something else in her eyes too, fear. Tessa had been acting strange for months, distant, always checking her phone, always nervous. But I pushed that thought away. I needed to focus on Harper. I leaned in close to my daughter's ear. I promise you, baby girl, I whispered. I'm going to fix this. Daddy's here. Night fell over the hospital. The hallway lights dimmed. The nurses changed shifts. I was running on caffeine and rage. Around 2 a.m., a young nurse walked in to check Harper's vitals. Her name tag said Violet. She looked terrified. She checked the 4-drip, her hands shaking. She kept glancing at the door as if she expected someone to burst in. Everything okay? I asked. She jumped, nearly dropping the chart. I shouldn't be doing this, she whispered. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears. Mr. Adrian, you need to know. The police report isn't right. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled yellow envelope. She didn't hand it to me immediately. She held it tight against her chest. My boyfriend, he works in the ER intake. The night Harper was brought in, one of the boys dropped his phone in the ambulance bay. The police confiscated it, but not before my boyfriend saw the video. He copied it. He knew they would delete the original. My heart hammered against my ribs like a sledgehammer. A video. They filmed it, Mr. Adrian. Violet whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek. They filmed it for fun. They were laughing. She shoved the envelope into my hand and practically ran out of the room. I sat there for a long time, holding that yellow envelope. It felt heavy, like it contained the weight of the world. My hands, which had held sniper rifles steady in the middle of sandstorms, were trembling. I knew that once I opened this envelope, there was no going back. The man I had been since retirement, the quiet father, the lawn-mowing neighbor, would cease to exist. If I watched this, the soldier would wake up. And the soldier didn't believe in accidents. I walked over to the window. The reflection staring back at me was tired, gray, and broken. But behind the eyes, the fire was starting to kindle. I pulled my phone out. I didn't call the police. I didn't call a lawyer. I called the only number that mattered in situations like this. A number that hadn't been active in 5 years. Make it quick. A distorted voice answered on the first ring. It's Adrian, I said. I need a ghost protocol. I need everything you can find on Judge Oliver, his son Julian, and every kid on the varsity football team. There was a pause. Are you back in the game, Adrian? I looked at the yellow envelope in my hand. I looked at my daughter's broken body. No, I said, my voice cold as ice. I'm not back in the game. I'm ending it. I sat down and tore open the envelope. Inside was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered to life. The timestamp was 3 days ago. I pressed play. The screen of my laptop was the only source of light in the dark hospital room. My finger hovered over the spacebar, trembling just slightly. I took a breath that felt like inhaling broken glass, and I pressed play. The video was shaky at first, filmed vertically on a cell phone. It started with darkness and the sound of dry leaves crunching under sneakers. Then, a flashlight beam cut through the blackness, landing on a figure curled up on the ground. It was Harper. She was already on her knees, her hands up in a defensive posture. The audio was clear, too clear. I heard the laughter first. It wasn't nervous laughter. It was the deep, belly-shaking laughter of predators who knew there were no sheepdogs around to stop them. Get up, princess, a voice shouted. I recognized it instantly. It was the same voice I'd heard giving the valedictorian speech at the high school last year. Julian, Judge Oliver's son, the golden boy. On the screen, a boot swung into the frame. It connected with Harper's ribs. The sound, a wet, dull thud followed by a sharp crack, made my stomach lurch violently. I didn't look away. I forced myself to watch every frame. I needed to memorize their faces. I needed to imprint their cruelty onto my soul so that when the time came, I wouldn't hesitate. There were 8 of them. I counted. They took turns. It was a game. One would push her, another would trip her. They were passing her around like a rag doll. Harper was crying, begging them to stop, calling out names of boys she thought were her friends. Please, Evan, help me, she screamed in the video. The camera panned to a tall, lanky kid standing on the edge of the circle. Evan. He looked hesitant, his hands in his pockets, but he didn't step in. He just watched. Then, Julian grabbed Harper by her hair and slammed her head into the dirt. She's out cold, someone laughed. Points for the QB. The video ended with the camera shaking as they ran off, leaving my daughter unconscious in the dirt. I closed the laptop slowly. The silence in the room was deafening. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. That's what an amateur does. That's what an angry father does. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was an operator assessing a threat. The rage crystallized into something cold and hard in my chest, like a block of ice that would never melt. The door opened behind me. I spun around, my body moving on instinct, ready to strike. It was Tessa. My wife stood in the doorway, clutching her purse with white-knuckled hands. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her makeup was smeared, and her eyes were darting around the room, avoiding Harper's bed. Adrian, she breathed out, her voice shaky. I finally came. Is she? She's stable, I said, my voice flat. But we need to talk, Tessa. Now. I didn't wait for her to argue. I grabbed her arm, gently, but firmly, and pulled her into the small and soot bathroom, closing the door so we wouldn't disturb Harper. I placed the laptop on the closed toilet lid and opened it. "Watch," I commanded. "What is this?" Tessa asked, backing away. "Adrian, I can't handle any more bad news." "Watch it, Tessa. You need to see what they did to our daughter." I hit play. I watched her face as she watched the video. I expected horror. I expected the same rage I felt. But that's not what I saw. As the video played, as Julian's face appeared on the screen, Tessa didn't gasp. She went pale, dead white. She covered her mouth, her eyes widening in terror. Not for Harper, but for herself. She slammed the laptop shut before the video finished. "Delete it," she whispered. I stared at her, thinking I had misheard. "What?" "Delete it, Adrian. Destroy that drive. Right now." She grabbed my shoulders, her nails digging into my shirt. She was frantic, hysterical. "You cannot show this to anyone. You can't give this to the police." I pulled her hands off me, stepping back as if she were a stranger. "Are you insane? This is the evidence, Tessa. This puts Julian and all those bastards in prison. This is justice for Harper." "This isn't justice, it's a death sentence for us," she hissed, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand who you're dealing with. Judge Oliver isn't just a judge, Adrian. He owns this town. He owns the police chief. He owns the bank." "I don't care who he owns," I growled. "He doesn't own me." Tessa slumped against the doorframe, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor, sobbing into her hands. Yes, he does." The air left the room. I looked down at my wife, a woman I had been married to for 18 years, and suddenly, I didn't know her at all. "What did you do?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Tessa looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks. "The business. The bakery. It was failing last year. You know it was. We were going to lose the house. I couldn't tell you. You were so proud of how we were managing on your pension. So I went to the bank, but they denied me. Then I met Judge Oliver at a charity dinner. He offered to help. A private loan. My blood ran cold. You took money from him. It wasn't just a loan, Adrian," she sobbed. "I signed papers. Terrible papers. If I default, he takes everything. The house, your pension, everything. And there were emails. Flirty emails. I thought I was just being nice to get the extension on the payments. But now, if this video comes out, he'll ruin us. He told me yesterday. He called me. He said if we press charges, he releases everything. He'll frame you for fraud. He'll make sure Harper never gets into a college. He'll destroy us." I stood there, processing the betrayal. It hit me harder than any bullet ever had. While I was thinking my wife was grieving, she was actually negotiating our surrender. She had sold our silence to save a house, to save her reputation. She stood up, reaching for the laptop again. "Give it to me, Adrian. We have to let it go. For Harper's sake. We can move away. Start over." I grabbed the laptop before she could touch it. I looked at her, and the love I had held for her for 2 decades flickered and died, snuffed out by the reality of her cowardice. "Go home, Tessa," I said. "Adrian, please, go home." I roared, the command echoing off the tile walls. "Pack your things. I don't care where you go, but do not come back to this hospital. You surrendered." "I didn't." She fled the room, sobbing. I was alone again. I looked at the laptop. The path was clear now. The police were compromised. The courts were owned by the enemy. My own home base was infiltrated. I had no allies. I had no backup. And that was exactly how I liked it. I pulled out my burner phone and dialed the number I had called earlier. The voice on the other end answered immediately. "I have the names," I said. "And I have the leverage. I'm not going to the police. I need full dossiers on 8 targets. Financials, fears, secrets, drug habits. I want to know what they eat for breakfast and who they text at midnight." "And the objective?" the voice asked. I looked through the open bathroom door at my daughter's motionless form. "Total dismantle," I said. "We aren't going to kill them. We're going to make them wish they were dead." I hung up. The video of Julian laughing was burned into my retinas. He thought he was untouchable because of his father's gavel. He thought power was about money and influence. He was about to learn that real power is a father with nothing left to lose and a specific set of skills designed to dismantle insurgents. The war had officially begun. The first rule of asymmetric warfare is simple. Know your enemy better than he knows himself. When you're outgunned and outnumbered, you don't charge the front gate. You find the cracks in the foundation, the rotted wood beneath the paint. I spent the next 48 hours living out of a motel room 2 towns over. I couldn't go home. The house felt contaminated by Tessa's betrayal, and I knew Judge Oliver would have eyes on it. I told the hospital staff I was visiting family to throw off any scent, but I was actually building a war room. The motel walls were soon covered in taped-up photos, printouts, and timelines. My contact, an old intel specialist named Ghost, who operated out of a basement in Nevada, had come through. The file he sent was encrypted and massive. I stared at the 8 faces pinned to the wall. The starting lineup of the high school football team. The pride of the town. To everyone else, they were golden boys. To me, they were targets. Target 1, Julian Oliver. The quarterback. The ringleader. Son of the judge. Target 2, Evan Miller. The wide receiver. The tall, lanky kid from the video who had hesitated. Targets 3 to 8. A mix of linemen and linebackers. Sons of the sheriff, the mayor, the local car dealership owner. It was a tangled web of nepotism. This wasn't just a group of bullies. It was a protected caste system. Attacking one meant attacking the entire town's infrastructure. I started digging into the soft intel, the stuff you don't find in police records. Social media archives, deleted posts, private Venmo transactions. Ghost's algorithms churned through terabytes of data while I drank black coffee and sharpened my focus. I found the pattern quickly. Julian was the alpha. He controlled the pack through fear and money. He paid for the steroids. He bought the alcohol. He held the secrets. But every pack has a weak link. I picked up the photo of Evan Miller. In the video, he was the only one not laughing. He was the only one who looked away when Julian kicked Harper. And according to the financials Ghost pulled, Evan was the only one not coming from money. Single mom, waitress at the diner, scholarship dependent. He wasn't playing football for glory. He was playing for survival. He was my way in. But first, I needed to see the enemy in their natural habitat. The school board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday night. The topic, safety and community standards. Irony is a bitter pill. I shaved, put on a nondescript gray hoodie and jeans, the uniform of the invisible man, and drove to the high school. The auditorium was packed. Parents were murmuring, holding coffees. I slipped into the back row, sitting in the shadows. On the stage sat Principal Henderson, flanked by Coach Reynolds, and there he was, Judge Oliver. The judge was a charismatic man, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. He radiated authority. We are all saddened by the unfortunate accident involving Harper Adrian, Principal Henderson said into the microphone. His voice was smooth, practiced. But we must not let rumors tarnish the reputation of our fine student-athletes. These boys are under immense pressure as we approach the state semifinals. A few parents nodded sympathetically. It made me sick. They were prioritizing a trophy over a girl's life. Coach Reynolds leaned forward. He was a bull-necked man who looked like he chewed rocks for breakfast. My boys are good kids. They've been cooperating fully. We need to focus on the game this Friday. We need the community's support, not witch hunts. Then Judge Oliver spoke. He didn't use a microphone, but his voice carried to the back of the room. Let us pray for Harper's recovery. And let us remember that in this country, we are innocent until proven guilty. We cannot let grief cloud our judgment. The applause was polite, but firm. They had bought the lie. They wanted to buy the lie because the truth was too ugly. I scanned the front row. The team was there. They were wearing their Letterman jackets like armor. Julian sat in the center, looking bored, checking his phone. He had the arrogance of someone who had never faced a consequence in his life. But 3 seats down, I saw him. Evan. Evan wasn't looking at his phone. He was staring at his hands, his leg bouncing nervously. He looked pale, sweaty. Every time the principal mentioned Harper's name, Evan flinched. Gotcha, I thought. I waited until the meeting ended. The crowd filed out, parents patting the players on the back. Go get him Friday, boys, someone shouted. I slipped out the side exit and waited by the student parking lot. I wasn't there to confront them. Not yet. I was there to plant a seed. I watched as the boys walked to their cars. Julian hopped into a brand new lifted truck. He was laughing, high-fiving the others. Did you see Henderson sweating? Pathetic, Julian jeered. Evan walked alone to a beat-up sedan parked in the far corner. He unlocked the door, fumbling with his keys. I moved. I didn't run. I just stepped out of the shadows, timing it, so I passed right behind him as he opened his door. I didn't stop. I didn't look at him. I just spoke, low and clear, directly into his ear as I walked past. I saw the video, Evan. I know you didn't laugh. Evan froze. He dropped his keys. The sound of metal hitting asphalt was loud in the quiet lot. He spun around, his eyes wide with terror, scanning the dark. Who's there? He stammered. Who said that? But I was already gone, melting into the darkness between the rows of cars. I watched from a distance as he scrambled to pick up his keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely get them into the ignition. He peeled out of the lot, driving too fast. Fear is a powerful weapon. It festers. It grows in the silence. Tonight, Evan wouldn't sleep. He would wonder who knew. He would wonder if Julian knew. Paranoia would start to eat him alive. I drove back to the motel. The image of Evan's terrified face burned into my mind. The first crack in the dam had appeared. Now, I just needed to apply pressure until the whole structure collapsed. I sat down at my laptop and opened a secure messaging app. I typed a message to Ghost. Target acquired. Subject is unstable. Initiating psychological operations phase. I need access to his cell phone. Clone his number. Ghost's reply came instantly. Done within the hour. What's the play? I looked at the photo of Judge Oliver on my wall. I took a red marker and drew a circle around Evan, then drew a line connecting him to the judge. The play is simple, I typed back. We make the weak link snap. I lay down on the hard motel bed, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't a Navy SEAL anymore, but tonight, I felt the familiar hum of a mission in my veins. They had beaten my daughter into a coma for fun. Now, I was going to tear their world apart for justice. And the best part, they wouldn't even know who was doing it until it was too late. Psychological warfare isn't about loud noises. It's about silence. It's about making someone doubt their own reality. You don't scream at the enemy. You whisper. You make them feel like the walls are closing in, like the air is getting thinner, until the only way they can breathe is to confess. Evan Miller was already suffocating. I just needed to tighten the screw. Ghost had cloned Evan's phone by morning. I could see everything. His texts, his location, his browser history. The kid was a mess. He had been Googling penalties for assault with a deadly weapon and can minors be tried as adults until 4 a.m. I sat in my truck, parked 3 blocks away from the high school, watching the dot on my screen that represented Evan. It was lunch break. I sent the first text. I didn't use a random number. I spoofed the caller ID to make it look like it was coming from unknown. Text. She's still in a coma, Evan. Do you think about her when you close your eyes? I watched the dot on the screen stop moving. He was in the cafeteria. I could imagine him freezing, the color draining from his face, looking around at his friends who were probably laughing and eating pizza. I waited 2 minutes, then sent the second one. Text. Julian won't protect you when the video leaks. You're the only one who didn't laugh. You're the liability. I saw the dot move rapidly. He was leaving the cafeteria. He was running. He was heading for the locker rooms. Isolation. Perfect. I switched tactics. I drove my truck to the park where the team practiced after school. I didn't hide. I parked in plain sight, right by the bleachers, but I stayed behind tinted windows. When the team jogged out onto the field, I just sat there. Evan saw the truck. It was a black, lifted pickup. Nothing unique, but ominous when it's idling and watching you. He kept glancing over. He dropped 3 passes in a row. Coach Reynolds screamed at him, "Miller, get your head in the game or get off my field." Evan flinched. He looked at Julian. Julian whispered something to him. Probably a threat, probably telling him to toughen up. But Julian didn't know about the texts. Julian didn't know the ghost was already in the machine. That night, I escalated. I knew Evan worked the closing shift at the local diner to help his mom. I waited until 10 p.m. when he was taking out the trash to the dumpster in the back alley. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle. The alley was poorly lit. Perfect operational conditions. As Evan threw the bag into the dumpster, I stepped out. I was wearing a black raincoat, hood up, face in shadow. I stood between him and the back door. He spun around and gasped, backing up until he hit the brick wall. "Who are you? What do you want?" I didn't move toward him. I just stood there, a statue in the rain. "You have a choice, Evan," I said. My voice was calm, almost gentle. "The video is going to come out. It's inevitable. When it does, there will be 2 groups of people, the monsters who did it and the witness who tried to stop it." He was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. I can't. "Julian, his dad. They'll kill me. They will destroy you to save themselves." I corrected him. "Julian is the judge's son. Who do you think they'll pin it on? The rich kid or the scholarship kid with the single mom?" Evan slid down the wall, clutching his knees. He was sobbing now. "I didn't want to hurt her. I told them to stop. I swear to God, I told them to stop. Tell the truth, Evan, before it's too late." I turned and walked away into the rain. I didn't look back. I knew I had planted the seed of survival instinct. He knew I was right. He was the disposable one. The next morning, the paranoia bore fruit. I was monitoring his phone. At 8:15 a.m., during first period, Evan sent a text to Julian. "Evan, I can't do this anymore. Someone knows. I'm going to the police station after school. I'm telling them it was an accident, but I'm telling them we were there. Julian, don't be stupid. Shut up. My dad handles everything." "Evan, no. He handles you. He won't handle me. I'm done." Bingo. But then, the system fought back faster than I anticipated. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was an alert from Ghost. "Alert. Judge Oliver's personal cell just called the sheriff directly. Sheriff is dispatching a unit to the high school. They aren't going to arrest Evan. They're going to intercept him." I cursed. I slammed my truck into gear. I was 10 minutes away from the school. "Ghost, can you jam the sheriff's comms?" "Negative," Ghost replied. "But I can trigger the fire alarm at the school. Create chaos." "Do it." I sped toward the school, running red lights. If the sheriff got to Evan first, the kid would be intimidated into silence, or worse. Protective custody in a town like this meant a dark cell and a coerced statement. As the school came into view, the fire alarm was blaring. Students were pouring out onto the lawn. It was chaos. Fire trucks were arriving. I scanned the crowd. I saw the sheriff's cruiser pull up to the curb, not with lights and sirens, but quietly. 2 deputies got out. They weren't looking at the fire drill. They were scanning faces. They were hunting. Then I saw Evan. He was running, not toward the designated assembly area, but toward the student parking lot. He was making a break for it. He got into his sedan. The deputies saw him. They started running toward his car, shouting. Evan panicked. He threw the car into reverse, tires screeching, and peeled out of the lot, narrowly missing a teacher. He sped down the main road, away from the school, away from the sheriff. I followed. I stayed 3 cars back. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Mr. Adrian." A shaky voice. It was Evan. "Evan, pull over," I said. "I can help you. Don't run." "They're coming for me," he screamed. I could hear the engine revving in the background. Julian texted me. He said I'm dead. He said his dad knows. "Listen to me, son. You need to come to me. We go to the state police together. Local cops are compromised." I have the video too." Evan cried. "I made a copy. I have it on my phone. I can prove." Crash. The sound was deafening. Metal crunching on metal. Glass shattering. Then silence. "Evan, I shouted. Evan. The line was dead. I rounded the curve a quarter-mile down the road. I saw the smoke rising before I saw the car. Evan's sedan had veered off the road and slammed head-on into a massive oak tree. The front of the car was accordioned in. Steam hissed from the radiator. I slammed on my brakes and sprinted toward the wreck. But as I got closer, I saw another car, a black SUV with tinted windows, speeding away from the scene on a side road. It had bumper damage. This wasn't an accident. He had been run off the road. I reached Evan's car. He was slumped over the steering wheel, blood pouring from a gash on his head. He was unconscious. I checked for a pulse. Freddie. Weak. But there. Sirens wailed in the distance. The sheriff's deputies were coming. I looked at Evan's hand. It was open. His phone was gone. I scanned the floorboard. Nothing. The black SUV. They hadn't just run him off the road. They had stopped. They had taken the phone. They had taken the evidence. I heard tires screech behind me. The sheriff's cruiser skidded to a halt. Deputies jumped out, guns drawn, pointed at me. Step away from the vehicle, they screamed. Hands in the air. I raised my hands slowly, staring at the deputies. They weren't here to save Evan. They were here to secure the scene. I had pushed the weak link, and the system had snapped it in half. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and fear. It was a smell I knew well, but tonight, it choked me. 2 floors above, my daughter lay silent in a coma. Now, down the hall in the ICU, Evan Miller was fighting for his life. The official story was already being spun on the local news, playing on the waiting room TV. Tragedy strikes again at Lincoln High. Star athlete Evan Miller, reportedly distraught over the recent accident involving Harper Adrian, lost control of his vehicle in a single-car crash. Sheriff's deputies say speed was a factor. Single-car crash. Speed was a factor. Lies. I sat in the plastic chair, my hands clasped together, watching the door. The sheriff's deputies were guarding Evan's room. Not protecting him, guarding him. They were making sure no one got in. Especially me. I hadn't been arrested at the crash site. They had no grounds. I was just a concerned citizen who arrived first. But they had taken my statement with cold eyes and told me to leave town. My phone vibrated. Ghost. Ghost. Black SUV identified. Registered to a shell company. Oakhaven Holdings. Guess who sits on the board? I didn't need to guess. Judge Oliver. I walked out of the waiting room, needing air. I went to the roof access. The door was locked, but a quick shim with a credit card popped the latch. Old habits. The night air was cold. I walked to the edge and looked out over the town. From up here, it looked peaceful. Lights twinkling, cars moving slowly. But underneath, it was rotting. A door opened behind me. I turned. Standing there, in a bespoke Italian suit that probably cost more than my house, was Judge Oliver. He wasn't alone. 2 large men in cheap suits, private security, ex-cops probably, stood behind him. Mr. Adrian, the judge said. His voice was smooth, like aged whiskey. Enjoying the view. It's a long way down, I said, leaning against the parapet. For anyone who falls. The judge chuckled dryly. He walked closer, signaling his goons to stay back. He wanted this to be intimate. Man to man. You're a persistent man, Adrian. A patriot. I respect that. You served your country. You understand. Collateral damage. My daughter isn't collateral damage, I said, my voice low. And neither is that boy downstairs. Judge Oliver sighed, checking his gold watch. Evan is a tragic case. Unstable. Mental health issues. It's sad, really. But the town needs to heal. We have a championship to win. We have scholarships to secure. The future of this community depends on stability. He reached into his jacket pocket. I tensed, ready to move. But he didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a checkbook. I know about your financial situation, Adrian. I know about the bakery. The debt. It's a heavy burden for a man to carry alone. He uncapped a fountain pen. Name your price. To walk away. To take your wife, who I believe is very eager to move on, and start fresh somewhere sunny. Florida, perhaps. I looked at the checkbook. It was the ultimate insult. He thought he could buy my grief. He thought he could purchase my silence like he bought everything else. You think this is about money? I asked. Everything is about money, Adrian. Or power. Right now, you have neither. You have a comatose daughter, a terrified wife, and a dead-end investigation. I'm offering you a life raft. He scribbled something and tore the check out. He held it toward me. It was blank. Fill it in, he said softly. Be reasonable. Be a father who provides, not a martyr who destroys. I took the check. The paper felt crisp. I looked him in the eye. You missed a spot, I said. Excuse me. On the bumper of your SUV. The one your cleaner drove. There's blue paint from Evan's car. You fixed the dent, but you rushed the paint job. The judge's smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was there. Fear. I held up the check. I don't want your money, Oliver. I flicked the lighter open. The flame danced in the wind. I touched it to the corner of the check. We both watched it curl into ash and float away into the night sky. I want your life, I whispered. I want your legacy. I want to watch you sit in a cell while your son realizes you can't save him anymore. The judge's face hardened. The mask of civility dropped. He looked like what he was, a monster in a suit. You're making a mistake, soldier. You're playing a game you don't understand. I'm not playing a game, I said, stepping closer until I was in his personal space. I'm setting a perimeter. He glared at me, then signaled his men. Watch your back, Adrian. Accidents happen every day. He turned and walked away. I stayed on the roof until my hands stopped shaking. Not from fear, from the effort of not throwing him off the ledge. I went back down to the ICU. I needed to see Harper. I needed to remember why I was doing this. I walked into her room. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep greeted me. But something was wrong. A nurse was there, adjusting the monitors. The pace was faster. The alarm light was blinking yellow. What's happening? I asked, rushing to the bedside. Her intracranial pressure is spiking, the nurse said, urgency in her voice. We need to get the doctor. Now. I grabbed Harper's hand. It was burning hot. She was seizing. Her body arched off the bed, fighting an invisible enemy. Harper, stay with me. I yelled. Doctors rushed in. Code blue. Get the crash cart. They pushed me back. Sir, you have to leave. Get him out of here. No, that's my daughter. Security guards grabbed my arms. I fought them, but I couldn't fight 4 men while watching my daughter die. They dragged me into the hallway. I watched through the glass as they shocked her chest. Once. Twice. Please God, I prayed, for the first time in years. Take me. Take everything. Just don't take her. The line on the monitor went flat. Then, a spike. Then a rhythm. A slow, weak rhythm. The doctor came out 5 minutes later. He looked exhausted. She's stable, he said, wiping sweat from his brow. But barely. Mr. Adrian. Her brain is swelling. If she doesn't wake up soon, she might never wake up. I slumped against the wall, sliding down to the floor. I buried my head in my hands. I had been so focused on the war, on the enemy, that I had almost lost the objective. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I pulled it out. It was a text from Tessa. Tessa, Adrian, come home. Please. I found something. In the attic. I think I know why the judge helped me. It wasn't just about the loan. I stared at the screen. The attic. I stood up. The grief was still there, heavy as lead, but the soldier was back in control. Harper was fighting. I had to fight too. I walked out of the hospital, into the cold night. The judge had declared war on the roof. But he didn't know that the war had already moved to a new front. My own house. The drive back to my house felt like driving into enemy territory. The streets were empty, the houses dark. My own home sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, the porch light flickering like a dying pulse. I hadn't been home in 3 days. The lawn was overgrown. Mail was spilling out of the box. It looked like a house that had given up, just like the family inside it. I unlocked the front door. The silence was heavy. Tessa, I called out. In here, came a voice from the kitchen. I walked in. Tessa was sitting at the kitchen table. The room was dim, lit only by the stove light. On the table sat a dusty, cardboard box labeled college stuff, old. Tessa looked hollow. Her eyes were red and swollen, but she wasn't crying anymore. She looked like someone who had walked through a fire and come out the other side with nothing left to burn. You said you found something, I said, keeping my distance. I couldn't forget that she had told me to delete the video. I couldn't forget that she had chosen fear over justice. She didn't look at me. She reached into the box and pulled out a stack of old photographs and a leather-bound diary. I lied to you, Adrian, she whispered. I know, I said coldly. You took a loan from the judge. No. She shook her head slowly. That was a lie too. There was no loan. The bakery wasn't failing because of the market. It was failing because I was distracted. Because I was seeing someone. I froze. The air left the room. What? She looked up at me then, and the shame in her eyes was bottomless. 5 years ago, when you were deployed on that last tour, I was lonely. I was weak. I met a man. He was charming. He made me feel seen. Who? I asked. The word was a blade. Chief Miller, she said. The police chief. The judge's brother. He ended it after a few months. Tessa continued, her voice trembling. I wanted to tell you, but I was terrified you'd leave me. So I buried it. But Chief Miller, he recorded things. Conversations. Messages. When the bakery started going under, I went to him for help. He told me to go to his brother, the judge. He said the judge helps family friends. She pushed a photograph across the table. It was old, grainy. It showed Tessa and Chief Miller at a restaurant out of town, laughing, holding hands. The judge has been holding this over me for years, she said. That's why the police won't investigate Harper's case. That's why the chief buried the report. Because if they go down, they take me down with them. They threatened to send these photos to you. To Harper. I stared at the photo. My entire marriage, the life I thought I was protecting while I was overseas, was built on a foundation of lies. The enemy wasn't just at the gate. He had been sleeping in my bed. So you sacrificed our daughter, I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. To hide your affair. I was protecting us, she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. I thought if I just kept quiet, if I just did what they said, they would leave us alone. I didn't know they would hurt Harper. I didn't know. You knew enough to tell me to delete the video, I said. I walked over to the table and picked up the box. I looked at the diary. It was filled with dates, times, meetings. It was a log of her betrayal. But as I flipped through the pages, I saw something else. Tessa had written down things the chief had told her during their affair. Drunken confessions. April 12th. He told me about the construction kickbacks. The judge takes 10% off the top of every city contract. May 4th. He laughed about how they planted drugs on that rival candidate's son. I looked at Tessa. She had handed me a weapon. A nuclear weapon. Why are you giving me this now? I asked. She stood up. She took off her wedding ring and placed it on the table next to the photo. Because I saw Harper today, she whispered. I snuck in while you were on the roof. I saw what they did to my baby girl. And I realized, no secret is worth her life. I'm done being afraid, Adrian. I'm done. She walked past me toward the door. Where are you going? I'm leaving, she said. She grabbed a suitcase that was waiting by the door. You can't fight them if you're worried about protecting me. I'm the leverage they have on you. If I'm gone, if we're over, they have nothing. She opened the door. The night air rushed in. Burn them down, Adrian, she said, looking back one last time. Burn them all down. Then she was gone. I stood alone in the kitchen. My wife was gone. My daughter was dying. My life was in ashes. But in the ashes, I found clarity. I picked up the diary. I picked up the photos. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't a father anymore. I was a weapon. And the safety was off. I pulled out my phone and dialed Ghost. Change of plans, I said. We aren't just going after the boys. We're going after the fathers. I have the chief. I have the judge. I have the corruption. Copy that, Ghost said. But Adrian, if you do this, there's no coming back. This is scorched earth. I looked at the empty spot on her finger where the ring used to be. Light the match, I said. I spent the rest of the night scanning every page of the diary, every photo. I sent it all to Ghost's secure server. Then, I packed a bag. I grabbed my old tactical gear from the locked chest in the garage. Not guns. I didn't need guns to destroy these men. I needed surveillance tech, jammers, tracers. I drove to the judge's house. It was a mansion on the hill, overlooking the town like a castle. I didn't go in. I parked a mile away and hiked through the woods. I set up a directional microphone on a ridge overlooking his patio. I waited. At 2 a.m., the patio doors opened. Judge Oliver walked out, holding a tumbler of scotch. He was on the phone. "She's gone," he was saying. "Tessa left town." "No, she didn't take the files." I checked the house. "Wait, what do you mean Adrian was there?" He paused, listening. "Well, find him," the judge roared into the night. "If he has that diary, we are finished. Get Julian out of the state. Send him to the cabin. Tonight." I smiled in the darkness. The cabin. They were moving the king off the board. They were hiding the prince. I packed up my gear. I didn't need to hunt for Julian anymore. They just told me exactly where he was going. I wasn't going to wait for the courts. I wasn't going to wait for the police. I was going hunting. The cabin was located 2 hours north, deep in the mountains. It was the kind of place rich men went to hide their sins, isolated, private, and accessible only by a single dirt road. But before I went for the head of the snake, I had to cripple the body. Julian might be hiding, but his crew, the other 7 boys who had laughed while my daughter bled, were still in town. They were still going to school, still living their lives as if nothing had happened. That ended today. I sat in my truck, watching the sunrise over the sleepy town. The diary Tessa left me was a gold mine, but Ghost had found something even better. He had cracked the team's group chat. They called it the Brotherhood. I scrolled through the messages. It was vile. They were joking about Evan's crash. They were betting on whether Harper would wake up a vegetable. They were sharing homework answers and steroid contacts. Target 1. Mason the Wall Verify. Mason was a lineman. Massive kid. His father owned the biggest car dealership in the county. Mason had a full-ride scholarship to State University pending. I opened the file Ghost had prepared. It contained screenshots of Mason buying anabolic steroids online using his father's credit card. It also contained a video from the locker room where Mason was bragging about paying someone to take his SATs. I didn't leak it to the news. That's too slow. I sent it directly to the NCAA compliance office and the admissions dean at State University. Send. 2 hours later, while Mason was in second period English, his phone blew up. I wasn't there to see it, but I could imagine the color draining from his face as his scholarship offer was rescinded via email. Target 2 and 3, the twins, Kyle and Logan. Sons of the mayor. They were the ones who had held Harper down. Ghost found their weakness in the cloud. They had been filming themselves vandalizing rival schools and stealing street signs for fun. Petty crimes, but documented felonies. I sent the footage to the local insurance companies and the rival school's principals. But the real blow was financial. I sent the logs of their illegal online gambling debts to the bookies they owed money to. Violent bookies in the city. By lunch, the twins weren't worried about football. They were worried about kneecaps. One by one, I pulled the threads. Grant, the kicker, had a secret drug habit. I tipped off his parents anonymously with photos. He was pulled out of school by his weeping mother before noon. Victor, the safety, was cheating on his girlfriend with her sister. I forwarded the DMs to both girls. His social life imploded in the cafeteria. It was surgical. It was silent. It was devastating. By 3 p.m., the football team wasn't a team anymore. It was a group of terrified, paranoid individuals turning on each other. Who was leaking this? Did you tell? It was Evan. It has to be Evan. They were eating themselves alive. But I wasn't done. The dismantling was just the appetizer. The main course was waiting in the mountains. I fueled up the truck. I checked my gear. No guns. Just zip ties, a satellite phone, a high-powered drone, and a flare gun. I drove north. The landscape changed from suburbs to dense pine forests. The air got thinner. The road turned to gravel. Ghost, give me eyes on the cabin, I said into my headset. Satellite shows heat signatures, Ghost replied. 3 individuals. 1 stationary, likely watching TV. 2 patrolling the perimeter. Armed. Security, I muttered. The judge hired pros. Be careful, Adrian. These guys aren't high school bullies. They're mercenaries. I parked the truck 3 miles out, hiding it under a camouflage net. I moved on foot, slipping through the trees like a shadow. The forest was my home. I moved silently, avoiding dry twigs, blending into the brush. I reached the perimeter of the cabin at dusk. It was a luxurious log cabin with a wraparound porch. A large SUV was parked out front. 1 guard was smoking on the porch, an assault rifle slung over his shoulder. The other was walking the fence line. I waited. Patience is the soldier's greatest weapon. Night fell. The guard on the fence line stopped to urinate against a tree. I moved. I came up behind him, silent as smoke. I didn't kill him. I applied a sleeper hold, a precise restriction of blood flow to the carotid artery. He went limp in 6 seconds. I dragged him into the bushes, zip-tied his hands and feet, and gagged him. 1 down. I moved to the house. The guard on the porch was bored. He was scrolling on his phone. I picked up a rock and tossed it into the bushes to his left. Crunch. He snapped his head up. Who's there? He raised his rifle and walked toward the noise. He stepped off the porch into the darkness. I dropped from the roof overhang behind him. I landed silently. Before he could turn, I had him in a chokehold. He struggled, flailing, but I was stronger. He went down. 2 down. Now, it was just the prince. I walked up the steps to the front door. I didn't pick the lock. I kicked it open. Bang. The door flew off its hinges. Julian was sitting on the leather couch, playing video games. He jumped up, dropping the controller. He looked at me, his eyes wide with shock. He looked for his guards. He saw no one. Where are they? He stammered. Dad said I was safe here. I walked into the room. I looked at this boy, this child who thought he was a man because he could hurt a girl. He was wearing expensive clothes, drinking a beer. He looked soft. Your dad lied, I said. Julian backed up until he hit the fireplace. He grabbed a fire poker, brandishing it with shaking hands. Stay back. I'll kill you. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, I said, walking toward him, ignoring the weapon. You're a coward who needs a pack to feel strong. But the pack is gone, Julian. The team is broken. It's just you and me. He swung the poker. It was a clumsy, desperate swing. I caught his wrist midair. I twisted. He screamed as the metal clattered to the floor. I swept his legs, and he hit the ground hard. I didn't hit him. I didn't need to. I knelt on his chest, pinning him down. I pulled out my phone. You're going to make a video now, Julian, I said. But this time, you're not the director. You're the star. Please, he sobbed, tears streaming down his face. Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. We were just having fun. Fun. I leaned in close, my face inches from his. My daughter is in a coma. Evan is in the ICU. That's your definition of fun. I hit record on my phone. Confess, I commanded. Name everyone. Name your father. Name the chief. Tell me everything, or I leave you here for the wolves. And he did. He sang like a bird. He told me about the assault. He told me about the cover-up. He told me about how his father paid the sheriff to destroy the evidence. He told me about the hit on Evan. It was all there, recorded in 4K. When he was done, he lay there weeping, broken. I stood up. I didn't zip-tie him. He wasn't going anywhere. He was defeated. My phone buzzed. It was an alert from the local news app. Breaking news. Judge Oliver issues warrant for the arrest of Adrian Hunter. Charges: kidnapping, domestic terrorism. Shoot on sight order authorized. I looked at the alert. Then I looked at Julian. The judge had played his final card. He had turned the law into a hit squad. I grabbed Julian by the collar and hauled him up. Get in the truck, I said. Where are we going? He whimpered. We're going to court, I said. but not the way your father expects. The sun was rising as we drove back into town. Julian sat in the passenger seat, hands zip-tied, staring out the window in terrified silence. He knew his life as the Golden Prince was over. The radio crackled with the local news. Manhunt underway for Adrian Hunter. Suspect is armed and dangerous. Police have set up roadblocks at all major exits. "My dad is going to kill you," Julian whispered, his voice trembling. "He'll have the cops shoot you before you even get close to the courthouse." "He's certainly going to try," I said, my eyes scanning the road. I wasn't going to run the roadblocks. That's what a fugitive does. I wasn't a fugitive. I was a man delivering evidence. I pulled over on a dirt road, 3 miles from the town center. I turned to Julian. "We're switching vehicles," I said. I had called in a favor from an old friend, a mechanic named Sal who owed me his life from a bar fight 10 years ago. Sal was waiting with a beat-up bread delivery van. We loaded Julian into the back among the empty crates. I put on a delivery uniform Sal had provided. "Good luck, Adrian," Sal said, handing me the keys. "The whole town is swarming with cops. The sheriff has SWAT deployed." "Thanks, Sal. Keep your head down." I drove the bread van through the police checkpoints. The deputies waved me through without a second glance. They were looking for a black pickup truck and a dangerous ex-SEAL, not a guy delivering sourdough. We reached the courthouse at 8:45 a.m. The square was packed with media vans, police cars, and protesters. The news of the bully athletes scandal had started to leak thanks to my earlier dismantling of the team. The town was waking up. I parked in the loading dock around the back. "Get up," I told Julian. I cut the zip ties on his legs, but kept his hands bound. I pulled a hoodie over his head to hide his face. I grabbed a large duffel bag containing the laptop, the drives, and the diary. We walked in through the service entrance. The security guard looked up from his coffee. "Delivery," I said, keeping my head down. He buzzed us in. We took the freight elevator to the 3rd floor. Courtroom 1. The hearing for the Harper-Adrian incident, a sham hearing set up by the judge to officially seal the records and bury the case, was scheduled for 9 a.m. They were trying to close the book before anyone could read the pages. I checked my watch. 8:58 a.m. "Ghost," I whispered into my collar mic, "Are you ready?" "Systems are green," Ghost replied. "I have control of the courthouse A/V system. Just say the word." I pushed Julian toward the double doors of the courtroom. "Showtime." I kicked the doors open. The room went silent. Judge Oliver sat on the bench, looking imperious. The sheriff stood by the prosecution table. A few lawyers were shuffling papers. "Order," Judge Oliver barked, banging his gavel. "Who is this?" "Bailiff, remove this man." I pulled the hood off Julian's head and shoved him forward. He stumbled into the center of the aisle. "Dad," Julian whimpered. The judge froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. The sheriff's hand went to his gun. "Don't do it, Sheriff," I shouted, holding up a dead man's switch detonator I had rigged. It was fake, just a garage door opener wrapped in tape, but they didn't know that. "I have this entire room wired to live stream. You shoot me, the world watches you execute a witness." "Adrian Hunter," the judge hissed. "You are under arrest for kidnapping." "I'm not here to kidnap anyone," I said, my voice echoing in the silent room. "I'm here to introduce new evidence into the record." "There is no new evidence," the judge shouted, standing up. "This case is closed. Sheriff, arrest him." "Ghost now," I yelled. Suddenly, the massive projection screen behind the judge's bench flickered to life. The audio screeched. And then, the video played. Not the video of the beating. That was for later. This was the video of Julian in the cabin. The confession. My dad told the sheriff to get rid of the phone. Julian's voice boomed through the courtroom speakers. He paid him $10,000 cash. He said they had to protect the family name. The courtroom erupted. Reporters who had snuck in started snapping photos. The lawyers looked at each other in panic. The judge screamed, "Turn it off. Cut the power." But Ghost had locked the system. The video continued. "We beat her because we could. Julian sobbed on the screen. We knew nothing would happen. We're the Golden Boys. Then, the screen changed. It showed the dashcam footage from Evan's car. The black SUV ramming him off the road. The license plate was clearly visible. And then, a split screen showing the registration. Oakhaven Holdings, Director, Oliver J. Oliver. The sheriff realized the game was up. He drew his weapon, aiming not at me, but at the screen, trying to shoot the projector. Gun, someone screamed. I tackled the sheriff before he could fire. We hit the floor hard. He was big, but I was trained to kill men with my bare hands. I twisted his wrist, and the gun skittered across the floor. I slammed his head into the parquet floor. Once, he went limp. I stood up, panting, and looked at the bench. Judge Oliver was slumped in his chair. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his son. Julian was standing in the middle of the room, looking at his father with pure hatred. You said you fixed it, Julian whispered. The judge looked at me. His eyes were empty. He knew. It was over. The castle had fallen. You think you've won. The judge whispered, his voice shaking. You've just destroyed this town. No, I said, pointing to the cameras that were now live streaming to millions. I just cleaned it. Police, state troopers this time, not the corrupt locals, burst through the doors. They had been alerted by Ghost minutes ago. Hands in the air, they shouted. I raised my hands slowly. I didn't resist. I let them cuff me. As they led me out, I looked back. The sheriff was being handcuffed on the floor. Julian was crying, and Judge Oliver was sitting alone on his bench, surrounded by the ruins of his empire. I was going to jail, but for the first time in weeks, I felt light, because I knew something they didn't. Ghost had just sent one final message to my phone before they took it. Harper's brain activity just spiked. She's fighting. The holding cell was cold, but the silence was peaceful. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I wasn't running, planning, or hunting. I sat on the metal bench, staring at the concrete wall, replaying the look on the judge's face. I had been in custody for 6 hours. The state troopers had separated me from the local police immediately. They knew the score. They knew if I was left alone with the sheriff's deputies, I wouldn't survive the night. The door buzzed and clanked open. A woman in a sharp navy suit walked in. She carried a briefcase and had the kind of walk that said she didn't waste time. Mr. Hunter, she said, sitting on the opposite bench. I'm Special Agent Reynolds, FBI Public Corruption Unit. Took you long enough, I said. She allowed a small, tight smile. We've been watching Judge Oliver for 2 years. We just couldn't get anything to stick. He was careful. But you weren't careful. You were a sledgehammer. Sometimes you need to break the wall to see the rod, I replied. Indeed. The videos you broadcast in the courtroom are trending worldwide. The dashcam footage of the hit and run on Evan Miller has been viewed 20 million times. The governor has suspended the sheriff. The state attorney general has taken over the prosecution. She paused, opening her briefcase. And Judge Oliver, well, his situation has evolved. Evolved how? He tried to run, she said. After the courtroom was cleared, he managed to slip out a side exit during the chaos. He made it to the private airfield. He was trying to board a chartered flight to a non-extradition country. I sat up straighter. Did he make it? No, she said. We grounded the plane. But he's not in custody yet. He's currently barricaded in the hangar with a hostage. My blood went cold. Who? Agent Reynolds looked at me with sympathy. Your wife, Tessa. I stood up, the chains on my wrists rattling. He is Tessa. She must have gone to the airfield to confront him, or maybe to beg for help. We don't know. But he grabbed her. He's demanding a chopper and safe passage, or he kills her. Let me go, I said. Mr. Hunter, you are a federal prisoner. I'm the only one who knows how he thinks. I snapped. He's desperate. He's a narcissist whose world just collapsed. He wants to hurt me. Killing her is the best way to do that. Let me talk to him. She stared at me for a long moment, weighing the risks. Then she tapped her earpiece. Get the transport ready. We're going to the airfield. The airfield was a circus of flashing lights. SWAT teams had the hangar surrounded. Snipers were on the roof. I was led to the command center, still in handcuffs. The negotiator was on a bullhorn, trying to get Oliver to pick up the phone. He won't talk, the SWAT commander said. He says he'll only speak to Hunter. Agent Reynolds nodded to the commander. Uncuff him. Give him the phone. They took the cuffs off. I rubbed my wrists and took the phone. Oliver, I said. Hello, Adrian. The judge's voice crackled through the line. He sounded calm. Too calm. I knew you'd come. You have a hero complex. It's your fatal flaw. Let her go, Oliver. It's over. The world knows everything. Killing her won't save you. Save me. He laughed, a dry, bitter sound. I don't want to be saved, Adrian. I just want to balance the scales. You took my son. You took my legacy. So I'm taking your wife. It seems fair. She didn't do anything. I yelled. She was your pawn. She was a liability. Just like you. Where is she? Right here. Say hello, Tessa. Adrian. Tessa's voice was high-pitched, terrified. I'm sorry. I tried to stop him. He has a gun to my head. Listen to me, Oliver, I said, forcing my voice to be steady. You're a man of the law. You know how this ends. You kill her, the snipers take you out. You walk out now, you get a trial. You get a chance to spin the narrative. You're good at that, aren't you? Spinning the story. Silence on the line. I was appealing to his ego. It was the only card I had left. A trial. He mused. Yes. The trial of the century. I could expose everyone. The governor, the senators. They all took my money. Exactly, I pressed. You have leverage. But only if you're alive. You make a compelling argument, Adrian. Walk out, I said. Unarmed. Hands up. All right. I'm coming out. The line went dead. He's coming out. I shouted to the SWAT team. Hold fire. The hangar door creaked open slowly. A figure emerged into the spotlight. It was Tessa. She was walking slowly, her hands raised. She was crying. Hold fire. The commander ordered. Tessa walked 10 yards. Then 20. She was safe. But where was Oliver? Suddenly, a single gunshot rang out from inside the hangar. Bang. I flinched. The SWAT team breached the hangar, shouting go. 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 I ran to Tessa. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. He did it. He did it. It's okay. I whispered, holding her, even though I knew things between us could never be fixed. You're safe. Agent Reynolds walked out of the hangar a minute later. She shook her head. Self-inflicted, she said. He took the coward's way out. I looked at the hangar. The king hadn't just fallen. He had removed himself from the board entirely. He couldn't handle a world where he wasn't the law. It was over. The dismantling was complete. The team was broken. The chief was arrested. The judge was dead. But there was one battle left. The most important one. My phone, which Agent Reynolds had returned to me, buzzed. It was a text from the hospital. Not a medical alert. A personal text from the doctor. She's awake. I dropped the phone. I looked at Tessa. She's awake, I said. Tessa looked up, hope flooding her tear-streaked face. Can I come? I looked at my wife. The woman who had betrayed us, then tried to save us, then became a hostage. There was too much damage. Too many lies. You can come, I said softly. But you can't stay. Not with us. Not after everything. She nodded slowly, accepting her sentence. I turned and walked toward the police cruiser that would take me to the hospital. The war was over. Now, the healing had to begin. The beep of the heart monitor was different now. It wasn't the slow, mechanical rhythm of life support. It was faster, irregular, the sound of a waking heart, reacting to light, sound, and pain. I stood in the doorway of room 304. My hands, still grimy from the airfield and the bread van, gripped the doorframe. Harper was sitting up. Well, sitting was a strong word. The bed was inclined. Her eyes were open, but they were hazy, struggling to focus on the ceiling tiles. She looked frail, like a porcelain doll that had been dropped and glued back together. But she was there. Her spirit was back in the room. Harper, I whispered. Her head turned slowly. It took effort. Her eyes searched until they found mine. A flicker of recognition. Dad. Her voice was a rasp, barely audible. I broke. The soldier, the hunter, the man who had brought down a corrupt empire. He dissolved. I rushed to the bed and fell to my knees, burying my face in her hand. I wept. Not silent, stoic tears. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. I'm here, baby, I choked out. I'm right here. She moved her fingers weakly against my cheek. You look tired. I laughed through the tears. Yeah, it's been a long week. The doctor came in a moment later. Mr. Adrian, he said gently. She needs rest. Her brain is rebooting. It's going to be a long road. She has memory gaps, motor function issues. But she's going to live. I nodded, wiping my face. I know. We've got time. A shadow fell across the doorway. It was Tessa. She stood in the hall, clutching her purse. She looked terrified. She hadn't stepped inside. Harper saw her. The monitor spiked. Beep, beep, beep. Harper's eyes widened. She pulled her hand away from me, clutching the bedsheet. She didn't look happy. She looked scared and angry. Mom, Harper whispered. Tessa took a tentative step forward. Oh, Harper, my sweet girl. Why? Harper struggled with the words. Why didn't you come? Tessa froze. I was here, honey. I heard you, Harper said, her voice gaining a sudden, surprising strength. When I was sleeping, I could hear. You were arguing with Dad about the judge. The room went dead silent. Coma patients often report hearing conversations, but hearing that conversation. You said, we had to hide. Harper continued, tears filling her eyes. You said, the money was more important. Tessa sobbed, covering her mouth. No, baby, no. I was scared. I was trying to protect us. Harper turned her head away, looking out the window. I want you to go. Harper, please, go. Harper tried to shout, but it came out as a strained croak. The monitor started alarming rapidly. The doctor stepped in. Ma'am, you need to leave. You're upsetting the patient. Tessa looked at me, pleading for help. Adrian. I stood up. I looked at the woman I had loved for 20 years. I saw the regret. I saw the pain. But I also saw the truth. She had broken the most sacred vow of a parent. Protect your child at all costs. You heard her, Tessa, I said quietly. Go. Tessa stood there for a second longer, shattering into pieces. Then she turned and ran down the hallway. I turned back to Harper. I took her hand again. It's just us now, kiddo. Just us. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and physical therapy. Because of my cooperation with the FBI and the fact that I had exposed a massive corruption ring, the district attorney cut a deal. All charges against me, kidnapping, assault, domestic terrorism, were dropped. They called it extenuating circumstances under extreme duress. The public called me a hero. I didn't feel like one. I just felt like a janitor who had cleaned up a very big mess. Julian and the other boys weren't so lucky. I went to Julian's sentencing. I sat in the back row. Julian stood before the new judge. He looked small. He had lost 20 pounds. His arrogance was gone, replaced by the hollow look of a prisoner. Julian Oliver, the judge read. For the aggravated assault of Harper Adrian, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and multiple counts of cyberbullying and harassment, you are sentenced to 15 years in state prison. Julian didn't cry. He just nodded. He looked at me as the bailiffs led him away. There was no hate in his eyes anymore, just resignation. He knew he deserved it. The other boys, Mason, the twins, Grant, all took plea deals. They were expelled, their scholarships revoked, and sentenced to juvenile detention centers and thousands of hours of community service. Their lives as golden boys were over. They were pariahs now. But the sweetest justice wasn't in the courtroom. It was in the gym. 2 months later, I wheeled Harper into the rehabilitation center. She was still in a wheelchair, but she was standing for 10 minutes a day now. Evan Miller was there. He had survived the crash, but his football career was over. His leg had been shattered. He was walking with a cane, limping slowly across the mats. He saw Harper. He stopped. He looked like he wanted to run away. "Hey," Harper said. Evan looked down. "Hey, my dad told me," she said. "He told me you tried to help. He told me you didn't laugh." Evan looked up, tears in his eyes. "I should have done more, Harper. I should have stopped them." "You're paying for it," she said, looking at his cane. "We both are." She held out her hand. Evan hesitated, then took it. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know," she said. "I watched from the sidelines." It wasn't a movie ending. They weren't suddenly best friends. But the hate was gone. The poison was drained. That night, I sat on the porch of our house. It was quiet. The for sale sign was planted in the front yard. I couldn't stay here. Too many ghosts. The town was cleaning itself up. New mayor, new sheriff. But the memories were stained into the sidewalks. Harper wheeled herself out onto the porch. "Did Mom call?" she asked. "She did," I said. "She's staying with her sister in Ohio. She wants to see you." "Not yet," Harper said. Maybe in a year." I nodded. "Take your time." "Where are we going, Dad?" she asked, looking at the stars. "I was thinking west," I said. "Montana maybe. Somewhere with mountains. Somewhere quiet. I hear the fishing is good." She smiled. It was crooked because of the nerve damage in her jaw, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. "I'd like that," she said. "Teach me how to fish." "I'll teach you everything," I promised. I looked at my phone. I had deleted the contacts. Ghost. The FBI agent. The reporters. I was done with war. But as I looked at my daughter, broken but healing, I knew the truth. The war never really ends. You just change the battlefield. And for the rest of my life, my battlefield was her. Protecting her. Helping her rebuild. Ready to go inside. I asked. "Yeah," she said. "Dad, yeah. You did good." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "We did good, kid." I wheeled her inside and locked the door. The house was empty, but for the first time in a long time, it felt safe. Montana is different. The air here doesn't smell like asphalt and secrets. It smells like pine resin and cold river water. The mountains don't judge you. They just exist, massive and silent, reminding you that your problems are small in the grand scheme of time. It's been a year since we left. I sat on the edge of the dock, casting a line into the crystal-clear water of Flathead Lake. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, colors that used to remind me of Harper's injuries, but now just remind me of peace. "You're doing it wrong," a voice said behind me. I turned. Harper was walking down the dock. She wasn't in a wheelchair anymore. She used a single crutch on her left side, and her gait was uneven, a rhythmic step-drag step. But she was walking. "Excuse me." I grinned. "I was a Navy SEAL. I know how to fish." "You were a SEAL in the desert, Dad," she teased, sitting down next to me with a grunt of effort. "Trout are different than camels." She took the rod from my hands. Her grip was strong. The tremors in her hands were almost gone, thanks to months of grueling physical therapy and hours spent tying intricate fly fishing knots. It was good for her dexterity, the doctors said. I think it was just good for her soul. We sat in silence for a while, watching the line bob in the water. "Did you get the letter?" she asked suddenly. I stiffened. "What letter?" "From Mom." I sighed, looking out at the water. Tessa wrote once a month. I never replied. I let Harper decide what to do with them. Usually, she put them in a shoebox under her bed, unopened. "I opened this one," Harper said quietly. "And she's working at a diner in Dayton. She's going to therapy. She says she's learning to forgive herself, so that one day, maybe I can forgive her too." I looked at my daughter. The scar on her jawline was fading to a thin white line. The anger that had consumed her in those first few months, the rage at the world, at the boys, at her mother, had softened. It hadn't disappeared, but it wasn't a forest fire anymore. It was just a candle she kept burning to remember. "How do you feel about that?" I asked. Harper reeled in the line a little. "I don't know if I can forgive her, Dad. Not yet. But I don't hate her anymore. Hating takes too much energy. I need that energy for walking. She looked at me, her eyes clear and sharp, the eyes of a survivor. You should forgive her too. Me? I scoffed. Harper, she made a mistake, Harper interrupted. A terrible, cowardly mistake. But you destroyed a whole town for me. You almost went to prison. You carried all that hate for both of us. You need to put it down, Dad. The war is over. I stared at her. My little girl, who used to ask me to check under her bed for monsters, was now the one teaching me how to banish them. She was right. I had spent the last year looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for some remnant of Judge Oliver's corruption to find us. But it never did. The FBI had done their job. The system had reset. I'll think about it, I said. Good. She handed me back the rod. Now, catch us dinner. I'm starving. Later that night, after grilled trout and quiet conversation, Harper went to bed. I stayed up, sitting by the fireplace in our small cabin. I opened my laptop. I hadn't looked at the news from our old town in 6 months. I typed in the search bar, "Update, Judge Oliver corruption scandal." The articles popped up. The town was rebuilding. The high school had a new anti-bullying program named after Harper. There was a photo of the new football team, kids of all sizes, all backgrounds, wearing jerseys with patches that said respect. I scrolled down. Julian Oliver denied parole. Sheriff Miller sentenced to 20 years. Justice wasn't just a word anymore. It was a reality. I closed the laptop. I picked up my phone. I hesitated, then opened my messages. I found the number I hadn't used in a year. To Tessa message, she read your letter. She's walking without the crutch sometimes. She's happy. Keep working on yourself. Maybe next year. I hit send before I could change my mind. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a truce. I walked outside onto the porch. The night air was crisp. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the clean, mountain air. I thought about the man I was before, the soldier who only knew how to destroy. And I thought about the man I was now, a father who was learning to build. Revenge is a fire. It burns everything in its path, the enemy, the innocent, and eventually, yourself. I had walked through that fire. I had been burned, but I had carried my daughter out of the ashes. And looking at the stars above Montana, I realized that the best revenge wasn't seeing Julian in a cell or the judge in a grave. The best revenge was this: the quiet, the peace, the sound of my daughter sleeping safely in the next room. We won, not because they lost, but because we survived. Wow, that was a heavy journey, wasn't it? Writing this story took me to some dark places, but seeing Adrian and Harper find peace at the end makes it all worth it. It's a reminder that even when the system fails us, the strength of a parent's love can move mountains.